tough day. Got a key witness on the stand, and I'm sure when I go back and listen later this afternoon, this is going to be very effective. All right, here we go, everybody. Yes. Wow. So impactful. So impactful. Let's check the audio. Audio sounds good, I believe. Yep. Very impactful. I'm a little high right there. Okay. I think we're going to be good. It's the lunch break. Yep. It's the lunch break. Okay. And we're going to talk with attorney Stephanie Murphy coming up. Should be good. Okay. Now, right now, we are live on X. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. And in 4 minutes, where we go? There's the YouTube. We're going to be live on AM 1380. Yes. Hi there, Jezebel. Hello. Thank you. Yes. Always. All right. Gian says we're ready to roll. Good. Suddenly the sun is coming out, which is fine. Just unsure if I'm going to need the blazer. And just so it's this, someone said, what kind of? It's not a suit. It's a blazer. Blazer and a pair of pants. Not everyone apparently buys blazers. They come in handy. Yes. We'll talk to attorney Stephanie Murphy coming up. Folks, another big day. By the way, there is something going on in Warwick. We're monitoring that situation. We are everywhere on this Thursday. Here we go. Yep. All right. You can certainly weigh in with what you think as long as you're respectful to others. And we're going to be going live in just a couple of moments. Boy, it's getting muggy here a little bit. Let's see. It's a little muggy. We may go without our blazer. I'm not sure if it was warm. But see, this when the sun's not out, I'm fine. When the sun's out, excuse me. No. Strike that. When the sun's out, it gets a little warm. We're live in 3 minutes, everybody. 3 minutes. Give it the latest. Court TV tonight, 9 to 10. Again, live in Dedham. Tomorrow afternoon, live at 3. Fox Nation streaming live. And then tomorrow night, we finish up the big week with Court TV. I don't know what's happening. Some people in and out. We're almost ready to go. How long's the lunch break? I don't know. Let me check. Good smoking leather.
It is good smoking leather.
What kind do you smoke?
American Spirits.
American Spirits. Oh, wow.
Imagine organic.
Really?
They are all natural.
Wow.
No chemicals.
We're live in 2 minutes, folks. How long have you smoked American Spirits?
6 or 7 years.
Yeah. I'm thinking of picking it up. It looks
Don't
relaxing.
like it.
Why?
Don't put it
Oh, no? It was a New Year's resolution that I was going to start smoking. Well, it seems relaxing.
It is very.
You like it?
I do.
Yeah. There you go. I'm jealous.
Not bad. They're very expensive.
Oh, all right. I've been meaning to pick up smoking. And folks, we're 1 minute out. 1 minute out. We'll walk you through. But then we're going to be joined by Stephanie, our attorney Stephanie Murphy is going to join us. We're going to go through some of the legal situations, obviously the Karen Read case. We're 1 minute out. Smells good.
Oh, yes.
Do you smoke inside your house?
Never,
No?
never, ever.
See, if I smoked, I'd want to smoke inside the house.
No, it's not worth
Do you
it.
smoke in the car?
That's the only place I smoke.
Oh,
But don't
okay.
forget, I have a 20-year-old car, too.
Oh,
Because if I bought a new car, I wouldn't smoke it.
I'll pick it up after the trial.
Don't smoke.
Why? You like it. It looks
Except
relaxing.
vaping, that's,
Oh. All right, folks, here we go. 1:06 on this Thursday. But that was one of my New Year's resolutions, was to pick up smoking.
a ball
So,
thing.
yeah.
I did another hobby.
Folks, PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. Hanging pots, 10-inch, 12-inch moss baskets, hanging impatiens, pansy, marigold bags, large selection of beautiful patio pots, vegetable plant herbs, tropical mandavillas, hibiscus plants, and more. Screen loom mulch are available. Pick up a delivery. Stop it and see them. 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. Now, they are a full-scale garden center and nursery. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. Now, remember, visit DePietro.com if you'd like to reach out to me. Boom, there it is. You just press Contact John. There's links to all of our social media. We normally post a lot of stories and video. Obviously, the Karen Read trial is taking up a lot of time. I still have a lot of good info on the situation with those Pawtucket firefighters. We will get to it. Check out DePietro.com. Brought to you by the Cohasset Inn, 226 Cohasset Avenue in West Warwick. So it's Thursday. It's day 16 of the Karen Read trial. We are in Dedham, and it was a very impactful day. Yesterday was an impactful day. Tuesday, there was no court. Right now, as you're listening or watching, we're live on X. Boy, the following on X picks up. We're live on YouTube. Our YouTube following continues. You can watch it live. One of the things about X and YouTube is you can bring it down and then use other functions with your phone. We're also live on Facebook. And then, of course, you can listen online at the website, which is DePietro.com. And right now, you can listen at AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. I want to say good afternoon. David in Bellingham, huge follower, huge fan, listens every day as he's having his lunch. Good afternoon, David in Bellingham, and he listens on AM 1380. I also want to say good afternoon to Ryan in Rentham. Ryan in Rentham, he listens on 99.9 FM. And again, same thing. During the lunchtime, they like to follow the latest with the Karen Read trial. And folks, don't forget, Marin, Barrett, and Murphy, criminal defense attorneys, 50 years combined criminal defense experience. Remember, your fight becomes their fight. Call them. They put the full weight of the firm behind every case. Free consultation. You're in need of legal advice. Call them, 401-228-8271. Just say you're a friend of the show. That's our code, friend of the show. Friend of the show gets you that free consultation with Marin, Barrett, and Murphy. And folks, let's bring her on. From Marin, Barrett, and Murphy is our friend, it is attorney Stephanie Murphy, as we're going to bring down and break out, I should say, top legal issues of the week. Good afternoon, Stephanie.
Good afternoon, John.
Stephanie, I want to start off. I have some questions about the Karen Read case, and then I want to hear some of your thoughts. I know you've been following the case as well, but I'm curious your thoughts and perspective on. We had the niece of John O'Keefe testified yesterday. I thought it was very impactful. Juvenile, so it wasn't televised. I'm curious your thoughts on normally the impact when a child, because it doesn't happen all the time, but when a child testifies in a criminal trial.
I think children have a huge impact on any trial when they testify. In this case, it's a little bit different, although she's a victim because, John is not, around. In this case, she really witnessed the crime that kind of led to the trial and stuff like that. So she's not an eyewitness person. But any juvenile testimony is always really impactful, the emotional part of it and everything else. Yeah, it's very interesting when juveniles testify in any court setting, especially when they're an eyewitness in a case, or in this case, when they're testifying about a bunch of different things about the victim's life.
And I'm also the medical examiner who's on the stand right now. And there's a difference between method of death or cause of death, and getting into how important is that in establishing what in a criminal trial, in determining the prosecution laying out exactly manner of death, cause of death. How important does that come into play in a criminal trial?
I think many jurors really take seriously what medical examiners say. They really value their opinion and their conclusion on the case. What the defense has to do is just get out to the jurors that there's only several manners of death, and it might just be an umbrella that catches, a bunch of different ways somebody could die. So it's good to distinguish that from the defense perspective. But I do find that jurors put a lot of weight on, experts or medical examiners and what their conclusions are. But I know in this case, in the first trial, they were able to do a good job of cross-examining, bringing their own experts to kind of dispute a lot of what the medical examiner says. So it might come down to a credibility and who's more believable, the state witnesses or the defense witnesses in this case.
Now, Stephanie, also, we're seeing a lot of heated sidebars. Obviously, we're not privy to them. The jury's not privy to them. They've introduced, the sound where, just plays sounds like white noise in the courtroom. At times, as I'm watching, is it my imagination, or it almost seems as though the true battle of the trial is taking place up at the sidebar?
A lot of times it really does, or sometimes it's also like theatrics and stuff like that. If you get a bad ruling, as an attorney, you want to go in and advocate for your client. So sometimes the sidebars, although no one can hear, is a heated conversation to show how you feel about an issue or how serious the issue is. But there's so many things that go on behind the scenes in conferences and also sidebars, where a lot of times the sidebars are recorded and there's a steno or recording. So they are recorded for part of the record. It's just that jurors cannot hear what's being discussed. So it's very interesting when you're watching a trial, you don't hear what's going on at sidebar, but the sidebar conversations are part of the overall record later on.
Could you also touch on, Stephanie, it was highly unusual Tuesday, just a little after 8:30 with court starting at 9, a little after 8:30, suddenly court was shut down for the day. They never gave an official reason other than say it was unavoidable. A number of people, sources were able to confirm that apparently it was illness on behalf of the defendant. But could you just touch on the unusual nature of it? Last spring, there was never a day missed due to the defendant being sick or anything. But could you just touch on how it is unusual in a trial of this magnitude, where literally the last second, it is called off because it seems to be illness and health of the defendant?
Yes, it's very unusual, very, very unusual. So it must have been, this doesn't seem like a defendant who's taking, anything. She wants to be there. She wants to be present. So it must have been something major, major sickness or a major issue for her not to be there as a defendant in this case. It's very unusual for anyone to call in sick. Think of how many trials we have, how many people are essential, witnesses and components of the party, defense attorneys, prosecutors, and judges. It's very rare that the trial gets called off for a sickness by any of those parties.
Now, Stephanie, I'm just curious, any observation? I know you've been following the case.
Yeah, I find it fascinating comparing the first trial to this trial. I know the jurors don't get that perspective and stuff like that, but I find it fascinating the things that are being kept the same, but then also all the different approaches that the prosecution's taking in this. I haven't really seen the defense do many things different yet, but they haven't presented their case yet. But it's very interesting how the first trial is almost like a learning experience, and now this is a real trial.
Folks, again, it's attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, let's walk through some of the other legal cases that we've been looking at. One is, now I was live outside of this and this is a Pawtucket man who's charged with shooting. It's a homicide. It was a Monday afternoon. It was a week ago Monday in Pawtucket in the afternoon, and it had to do with allegedly suspect shot a man and wounded her, but killed the man, but wounded the woman. But what Channel 12, Target 12 is reporting is that he apparently called his father, Eric Peterson, to admit to the crime. What do you take away from that? Other than I think he should have called. I think he should have called your office. But why don't you touch on that?
Should have called us first. So there's a lot that needs to be looked into and investigated for that. Whether or not that happened. Who overheard it, who heard it, what was said. That's a very broad statement that's being said, that he called his dad and admitted to the crime. But there's so much that has to go into admitting statements, getting the real story of what was said, everything like that. So it'll be really interesting, the police investigation. This is a brand new, crime. So the police probably haven't spoken to anybody or got any statements or many statements from people. So it'll be really interesting how the police collect that and what the police do with knowing that information, who else they reach out to.
Could you also just touch on, someone might think that if they have a conversation with a family member or someone like that, that somehow that could be excluded from police or excluded from a trial. Yesterday, Karen Reed's dad, Bill Reed, it's almost like he's daring the prosecution to call him to the stand. But someone, as upset as they may be, potentially could be misguided in thinking, if they talk to a family member somehow, that couldn't be disclosed.
Yeah, you have to be careful when you say anything about anything in terms of it being used against you. It's a lot better not to say anything than have to fight to keep something out. So if you have the choice, don't say anything, don't speak about anything that could be used against you or somebody else. If you don't want that used, it's much better to take that advice than try to do the legal fight of keeping something out that most likely will come in if it's from the defendant or someone getting charged. That is definitely an admission that can be used against them.
Now, another story, 3 people caught on camera accused of stealing from work restaurant. I'd like your thoughts on that. But Stephanie, I just don't think people fully comprehend that. They may not even realize it. But there's so many cameras all over the place. And I know, I did hear from someone that said, hey, if I'm sitting in a bar and having a drink, the restaurant needs my permission to put me on camera. It's my understanding, the moment you walk into an establishment, you forfeit your rights if they have, in fact, security cameras in their restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the cameras on the ATM machines, everything like that. There's cameras all over, on sidewalks, on businesses. Those are, you're being filmed. Typically, the cameras are visible, so you should probably know you're getting filmed. But regardless, when you're in an establishment and they're filming you, that can absolutely be used and turned over to the police department. It's kind of like we were saying before, a video is a statement. It's a statement against somebody for committing a crime. And it's much better not to be on video or not say anything than to fight to keep the video out at a later point.
Now, the big high-profile, huge trial, no cameras allowed in the courtroom, and this is Diddy on trial with the former, girlfriend, so forth, Cassie, back in court, testimony, talking about these freak-offs. I'm curious, Stephanie, what stands out to you thus far in the Diddy trial? I know some of the criticism that people are making is this, so far, it sounds like a domestic violence case and not so much. These are federal charges that he's looking at. But what are your thoughts on the Diddy trial?
That's what I was going to say. I mean, the charges are sex trafficking and all these different really, really serious, federal crimes. The defense attorneys were very open and just saying, this was not a good relationship. There was violence and stuff like that. And I really feel like her testimony is about all that violence, all the sexual abuse that, she had to endure and stuff like that. But I mean, the elements they have to prove in these federal charges are very specific elements that they have to prove. So I'm very interested to kind of learn when the testimony is going to kind of get to those federal charges and not just about an awful sexually abusive relationship.
Folks, again, it's attorney Stephanie Murphy. Now, Stephanie, the case regarding Aaron Thomas has now, in fact, wrapped up. It is of note, deliberations are going to restart with an alternate jury, what are your thoughts? This has been an ongoing high-profile case, the North Kingstown basketball coach Aaron Thomas that was doing what they called the naked fat test. Where do you think things stand right now?
So I think it's interesting with the alternate juror being called in. So what happens in a jury trial is typically there's 2 alternate jurors. who you don't know you're an alternate until after the trial's over. So 14 jurors are sitting and listening to the case, and they assume they're going to deliberate. At the close of the case, the clerk will pick the 12 jurors who are actually deliberating. 2 will be set aside, and those 2 people aren't part of the deliberations. They're in a different room. They're not part of the deliberations. But in this case, they had to go in and use one of those alternates. So I don't know how much deliberations they did prior to alternate getting called in, but it's interesting to know what I don't know what the conflict of interest was with the juror and why that conflict wasn't known beforehand. And then also, how much of the deliberations were already done and how much was needed to get caught up to speed.
Just one question follow up on that. And again, I don't know exactly what's behind it, but is it possible that, let's just say, you're the defense and or the prosecution, but one of the sides decides that one of the members of the jury is either unfriendly to the defense or unfriendly to the prosecution? Is it possible that they were kind of holding on to something, and now as it's getting closer and it's deliberations, and they don't feel comfortable with the juror, then suddenly, boom, they zap it and expose that there's a conflict?
Well, I've never had that where defense or prosecutor, did that. Typically it's something that's brought to the judge's attention through another juror. A lot of times maybe a juror will give a note that states, I have concerns about this juror. This juror was talking outside deliberations. And then the judge gets involved and has a conversation with the juror who's ever, brought something to their attention. So I'm assuming that's probably what happened. I've never had a case where after the fact, one of the prosecutors or another defense attorney brought up something about a juror. Typically, a lot of the research and homework's done prior to the selection. So that's when those concerns would get brought up. But I'm not sure what happened in this case.
Another item, and this actually came from one of our viewers, and it has to do with the Rhode Island Senate is advancing a bill for fewer self-checkouts and more cashiers. This comes from a business person that said, why should, in this case would be the state of Rhode Island, but the government interfere that if they want to put up all self-checkout type of system in their retail store, why should the state have the right to tell them that they can't do that, and instead that they have to have human cashiers?
I know. I think it's an interesting argument. I'm not really sure how legal it is, or more so, the business owner's personal decision to do what is best for their store. I know some older people, the claim is, they can't really do it that well and stuff like that. There's always options to go to a different store then. It kind of seems like a free choice sort of argument that owners can make, that they should be able to spend their money how they want. If they lose business because of it, then they might lose business because of it. But I haven't done much research into the new bill that's proposed, but I think it's interesting. I think the business owners have a really strong say in how they want to spend their money and how they want to run their own business. So I think it's kind of a strong legal argument. But I do understand the other side of, the state wanting to employ more people and having more jobs and like customer satisfaction of people coming in, being able to get the help they need. So I see both sides. I just kind of think all the legal arguments kind of go towards the store owners and their choice of how they want to run the stores, but I haven't looked into it too much.
I know they used to have, I don't know if they still do, but in New Jersey, that used to be you couldn't pump your own gas. If you pulled in somewhere, they had to employ someone that would pump the gas for you. And I think part of that was just to keep those people employed. Folks, it's time for Murphy's Law, or Stephanie's Selection. This is a story that Attorney Murphy has picked out. What do you have for us this week, Stephanie?
So it's back to the FAT test trial down in North Kingstown. I thought it was pretty interesting. Not only did the alternate juror come in, but I heard there's been 2 questions that the juror has asked to the court to get answers. And I kind of find that fascinating in terms of, I think questions really tell a lot about where the juror's mindset is right now. So I'm trying to find out what those 2 questions were and stuff like that. But that's a great kind of eye-opening statement to kind of get from the jurors of, do they want something reread? Do they want a transcript? Do they want to view something again? Typically, the judge will always say, what's presented before you is what's presented. You have all the exhibits. But sometimes they want part of the testimony read back. And as we were talking, I think this whole case relies on whether or not the state can prove the gratification part of it. So I'm really interested to know what those 2 questions were and what the readback was, or what the judge's answer was. So I'm definitely going to look into that. Just got done with court, but I heard that and wanted to learn more about it.
Folks, again, she's our legal analyst. She's excellent. Attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, excellent job as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, John. Bye.
All right, folks, there you go on this. Okay, good. Now, let me just stay on schedule here. I think everything is good. It's going to be interesting this afternoon. The prosecution in the Karen Read case is moving at record speed, and I want to touch on that just a little bit. Folks, again, Stephanie Murphy, she's great. If you're listening, watching, you have a legal question, you need, some people say, well, how much do I have to call for the free consultation? Call her, 401-228-8271. You can also find them on Facebook and Instagram. Staying on schedule, this portion of our program brought to you by Propane Plus. Call Propane Plus today, 401-885-4209 in Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus for all your heating and cooling. Remember, Propane Plus, 3 generations, they're available 24/7. You can depend on Propane Plus online at propaneplus.com. Just type in your zip code. Now, as far as the Karen Read case, I'm telling you that, and she's got a lot of supporters. I'm well aware of that. There were more people that seemingly seemed to, at least online, buy into the defense alternative theory that he was beaten to death in the house and tossed on the front lawn. There seemed to be more of a presence online of people that believe that and say that compared to others. When we're at Court TV at night, I'm willing to bet a big part of the audience that they believe the whole thing. And I could tell when Vinnie Politan, who was in court, was saying how many people think the dog bites are a big deal, and a lot of people raised their hand. Last night, we were taking questions from the audience. It's interesting to me to take questions from the audience because there are things that have been debunked, but they still press along with that. A woman asked about butt dials. Butt dials have nothing to do with what happened. I also want to just touch on this business of there are people that are claiming they have evidence. Someone posted on, I think, my TikTok page. So-and-so, she has good evidence. Folks, the only evidence is the evidence that's being introduced in the courtroom. And there's only one person that is on trial, and that is Karen Read. So another question the other night, a woman was asking whether or not did we think that Brian Higgins and Brian Albert were going to get in trouble for, as she said, for destroying their phones. There's no federal investigation. I know that some people are saying that, but the people that say that, I don't think people recognize, I know they don't, that you can't just stand up. Hank Brennan, the special prosecutor, stood up in a court of law with the judge and produced evidence from police that the police were notified that the federal investigation is over and that no indictments came from that. If there are people that think, by the way, if you think everybody's lying, if you think, well, everybody's lying, well, then you're good, then I don't know what to tell you. But that just goes too far. It's the same thing. People that say every cop is corrupt, I don't believe that. Everybody's lying. There are people that, if I transcribe, if I post what Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan is saying and what's happening in court, there are people that say you're lying. There are people that think the judge is lying. There's people that think Hank Brennan is lying. There's people that think the police are lying. Like, where does this end? If you believe that, what society are you living in? You're living in an alternate reality. Someone that I was speaking to said there's a major problem with a lot of people. They dismiss all experts and they become the expert. And then they seek out people that they consider to be experts to tell them what's going on. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Roofco, Rhode Island. Call them today, 401-868-7149. Remember, if you want to increase the value of your home or business, it starts with a new roof. Roofco, Rhode Island, 401-868-7149. 401-868-7149. Roofco, Rhode Island. They'll give you a free estimate. Call Joe. Have you been thinking of a new roof? Maybe you have wind damage. Why not call Roofco and say, hey, Joe, I heard Juan talking about you. Can you come inspect my roof? Leaky roof? Missing lifted or curled shingles, granules in the gutter, damaged chimney flashing, roof coat, Rhode Island, 401-868-7149. Now, I want to touch on, there's a number of people. It's funny to me that some of the Karen Read defense people, they're such wordsmiths, and they pick everything apart. What does this mean? And that means the whole thing. So yesterday, when the niece testified, now, as much as there are some people, they're rooting, for whatever reason, they're rooting for Karen Read, and they buy into the whole thing. And if you're in that foxhole, you're not looking for the truth. You're just looking for things to further the conspiracy, which, by the way, that's the danger of getting involved in a conspiracy. But when the niece was on the stand yesterday, let's frame this out. So I put David Yannetti, the defense attorney, what did I put? Something along the lines of akin to, he wants the niece to not call Karen the defendant, call her by her name. So that's not what he said. He said blah blah. He said, what did you call her when you knew her? Let's step back for a moment. This is a 17-year-old. This girl met Karen Read when she was 12. The niece, she was 14 years old. The whole reason she's living with her uncle, JJ, as they called him, or John O'Keefe, the whole reason is because both, in a very short amount of time, both of her parents died. They were orphaned. John O'Keefe, their uncle, he said, I got it. I'm going to move in, and I'll be the legal guardian for the niece and nephew. And they were doing that. That morning, she gets woken up by still an intoxicated. Can you imagine how crazed Karen Read was, waking her up at 4:30 in the morning? Between 4:30 and 5, Karen Read is saying to the niece, maybe a plow hit him. Who would think that? But did I hit him? Maybe I hit him. Did I do something to him? Keep in mind, this is 4 hours later. Last number 12:30, 1:30, 2, 3, 4 hours. 4 hours. She's leaving voicemails. You're a pervert. You're with someone else. You're using me. That would lead someone to believe he's hooked up at the party, or he called an old girlfriend that lives down the street, whatever. But it's 4 hours. It's not 4 days. It's not 14 hours later. It's 4 hours. Maybe the party was still going on. Maybe they were pulling an all-nighter. Who knows? Maybe he fell asleep and they said, just let him sleep. We'll get him a ride home in the morning. Whatever. But you're 17 years old. You lost your mom and dad. Then your uncle was killed. And you've been dealing with this for 3 years. Now she's 17. She was 14 at the time. You're brought into court. You're very nervous. In school, everything, it's a lot to handle. Her and the brother, and they live with the grandmother. And they have to go through the whole thing, and the amount of pressure on the family. And now she's in court. And you have a very official-looking person in the defense attorney, David Yannetti. Now, I also want to mention, I consider the niece that testified yesterday, I think of her as a victim. I think of her as a victim because her uncle was killed. It doesn't matter if you debate how he lost his life, she still lost her life. Her life was turned upside down, and John O'Keefe lost his life. So I consider her a victim. And so to have her sitting on the stand, which was not easy, to have to relive what happened in the early morning hours, let alone she talked about how John had confided to her that he was tired of all the fighting. He was tired of her, loudmouth Karen, right? Too many drinks, being loud, arguing with them over stupid stuff. I want more Tito's. I told you no ice. It soaks up the booze. Whatever. She had to relive that morning as this crazed maniac is waking her up, saying, I think he got hit by a plow. Could I have hit him? And then as she's on the stand, she's saying the defendant. And so then attorney David Yannetti said, well, when you knew her a couple of years ago, did you call her the defendant or Karen? He's standing up there. He's trying to intimidate her. He's basically saying, almost intimating, if you're 17, I could see for a moment she thought, am I in trouble? Was I not supposed to call her the defendant? Like, where's he going with this? So, what was, by David Yannetti, defense attorney David Yannetti, by him saying that, what was the intent? The intent was, this is a 17-year-old kid on the stand, and I'm going to get her to say her name. I'm going to get her to say, yes, Karen took me to get my nails done for a manicure. Karen once helped me with some homework. Yes, Karen, gave me a ride somewhere, or whatever thing now that Karen's trying to hang over her head. And instead she was saying the defendant. So, but make no mistake, Yannetti was trying to pressure her to call her by her name. So these people like, oh, he didn't, like, stop. Enough already, right? The same thing with the people of, well, did she say I hit him? Or did she say did I hit him? I mean, why is she even saying that? What are you talking about? So let's talk about what happened today. And Hank Brennan had a big day. Hank Brennan had a big day as he is streamlining the case and it's moving along, and he is extracting the information that he needs out of the witness, because that's what you do. And basically, and it was not easy. And Peg O'Keefe is not in the courtroom. And it was very difficult on the family of John O'Keefe. There he is. There are the autopsy photos. And by the way, keep in mind, it was Karen Reed that leaked the autopsy photos. She's just, like, who would do that? Who would do that to the niece and the nephew? Who would do that to the family? She leaked the autopsy photos because she wanted to put out her narrative about that. So what we learned in court was those aren't dog bites, because there's no puncture. There's scrapes. This woman examined the body. There were no punctures. They're not dog bites. There's no dog DNA. Those are scrapes, and it's only on the right side, right? Like shards of glass, shards of the tail light exploding. But they weren't punctured. A bite punctures in, right? The teeth go in. So, as I said the other night, some woman was like, what about those dog bites? They're not dog bites. Blunt force trauma to the back of the head. And it was difficult with the family in court looking at on the big screens. And I heard Matt Johnson saying that. These are big screens in the courtroom, and you can't ignore them. And it's so uncomfortable. They have to do it. They have to do it. And by the way, the niece wanted to testify. I've heard that as well. She was forced to testify. Someone else said the O'Keefe family walked out in protest because the niece had to testify. All false. Completely wrong. The niece wanted to testify. The niece is going to be 18 in October. And then I think she's going to have a lot to say about this whole thing. But blunt force trauma and hypothermia. I've had people posting, science proves he did not die from how the state, what are you talking about? His body temperature was 81 degrees. He's got a 3-inch gash on the back of his head. Step back just for a moment. Boom, she hit him. He crashed the back of his head, and it's brutal to look at. And I felt for the family, the O'Keefe family, as they were crying and sobbing, seeing it in the court. And the jury is moved by that. How can you not be moved by it? We're looking at autopsy photos of a beloved son, brother, uncle, friend, and he's just lifeless. Same thing with the eyes. So it's not every day that you look at autopsy photos. I'm telling you, it made a big impression on the jury. And the state's case of what happened and cause of death. Blunt force trauma to the back of the head, and then hypothermia. And I want to touch on that. Folks, this course of the program is sponsored by ServPro of Providence. Remember, when disaster strikes, ServPro of Providence. Call them 401-941-5500. If you ever have a fire, if you ever have a flood, if you ever have mold, ServPro of Providence, they're available 24/7. Water damage, fire, mold, storm recovery, fast, thorough, professional. I share their Facebook page, ServPro of Providence, 401-941-5500. I give the niece a lot of credit, but let's just be very clear, right? The medical examiner, the cause of death. You know, we were talking about it the other night at Court TV Live, and people, what we're seeing, the evidence we're seeing in court right now. Now, I understand that the defense is going to get a chance to put on their case, but right now, this, unless something changes, this is a very easy to understand case. Unless something changes, this is a hit and run death resultant. This is a fatal OUI, DUI, whatever. She was filled with alcohol fueled rage. She had, I love these people. She didn't have 9 drinks, she had 8. Like, whatever. She had 8 or 9 drinks, or 7. She drank a lot. She talks about it. The defense is going to have to put on a strong defense. Because right now, to me, it seems very clear with what occurred here, which was struck by the vehicle, and they are going to do accident reconstruction, and that is going to be big. I get that. So, but they're building the case. They definitely have the alcohol. I think they definitely have the manslaughter, and then the final thing to prove is going to be murder. And murder should be hard to prove, by the way. I agree with that. It should be hard. It should be the burden on the state to prove that a murder took place. But I just wonder how many, people that just continue to, they're staying on the crumbs, they're staying on the peripheral, they're staying on dog bites and butt dials and solo cups and, this ever evolving story and moving, it's like when they do the shuffle with the cups, right? And then you got to figure out which one has the ball underneath. I mean, it's a shifting, evolving defense as opposed to the obvious, which is she hit him and left him. It's terrible, but so far in this trial, we have not seen a reasonable explanation other than what Hank Brennan has put forward. Folks, this portion of the program brought to you by J. Perry Paving. High quality, fair pricing, exceptional service, 20 years experience, specializing in commercial paving, residential paving, seal coating, free estimate, any project. Letter J, J. Perry Paving. Call them 401-732-1730. 401-732-1730. Letter J, J. Perry Paving. Call them 401-732-1730. Now, this portion of our program is brought to you by Kids Club. Remember, summer camp at Kids Club is going to be coming up. Reserve the spot for your child or grandchild. Kids Club on the Pike, right off of 295, right on that Cranston-Johnston line. Kids Club on the Pike. Now, it is perfect for a birthday party venue, before and after school care. Preschool, but they have a great summer camp. Maybe your child or grandchild goes for a week. Maybe they go for a month. Maybe they go the whole summer. Kids Club of the Pike. Call them 401-443-5336. Call them. Reserve your space. Once they're full, they're full. It's Kids Club on the Pike, and they are fantastic summer camp. So I want to just reiterate again that with what's happening with the Karen Read case, and I've been very clear with people. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. I don't think, let me just see. Dr. Scortabello from the Office of Chief Medical Examiner is going to remain on the stand. She did the autopsy of John O'Keefe, and it's not easy. And, I was speaking with someone else, and what I believe is a disadvantage for the defense is the small courtroom, as someone was mentioning, because the jury, folks, in their line of sight, they're looking right at the O'Keefe family. If it was the larger courtroom in there, the family would be down to the back, and then the jury would just be looking like that. But it's so small, and as the O'Keefe's family, as they were crying and sobbing, which I don't blame them. If you're the jury and you're watching, you can't ignore They're right in your line of sight. They also started really looking at Karen Reed this morning. Robert Alessi displaying a graphic autopsy photo showing a cut to the back of O'Keefe's head, abrasion above the cut. Scorbello says the injuries could be consistent falling backwards on a flat frozen surface or getting knocked backwards. It is true. There are people. There's a fight outside. One person punches the other person. They fall back and hit their head on the curb. Tragically, that can be a frequent occurrence with street fights. Downtown Providence, just a couple of years ago, outside of I think it was Coliseum. It's a different nightclub now. But I remember the case. There was a fight out in the parking lot. Boom, someone punched someone else. And they have when you're parking, and they have, all the spaces have the little barrier. And the kid, he was a college kid, he banged his head on that. And he fell into a coma. And he never woke up from that. So it can happen. And think of the strike. And think of being consistent with a strike. Now, it's not lost on me that there are some people that just say, regarding the Karen Reed case, all the witnesses are lying. I'm telling you, in that courtroom, they're very credible. And when the niece yesterday had the number of Jen McCabe, how did you know Jen McCabe? I was friendly with her daughter. She was my basketball coach. That's how she knew her. She said Jen McCabe was very level-headed. Jen McCabe, Kerry Roberts. Oh, I know Miss Roberts. She was good friends with my uncle. They went to high school together. What I'm telling you is that those things, I believe, that those things, I think they help the prosecution. For those that are saying Brennan's getting crushed, Brennan is getting, this is brutal, and they are having a way. I'm just telling you right now, in that courtroom, you don't have people that are saying all the witnesses are lying. So in that courtroom, what they have laid out, what I believe, is a very plausible explanation as to how he ended up with his body on that lawn. And when you step back, I also want to touch on what the niece said, was there were increasing fights. The text messages from Karen Reed and John O'Keefe that day where he said, I'm tired of the fighting. I'm tired of all this back and forth. Karen was high drama. John O'Keefe was no drama. JJ, as he was known, he was a laid-back guy. He didn't want any of the drama. He didn't want any of the explosions. She had the explosion in Aruba. And then always, and all the incessant calling. You don't hear on her phone, he wasn't calling her 50 times. She called him 52 times. I also want to point out something that is really important. And it has to do, and I want you to just step back for a moment, folks. And again, I'm not trying to sway people that are listening or watching. I'm telling you and explaining how I landed where I'm landing. And things that make sense to me and some things that don't make sense. And I want to explain that. And it has to do with the parents. It has to do with the parents. This portion of the program is brought to you by Arch Design Builders. Listen, I'm doing you a favor. Arch Design Builders. Call them 401-207-4124. Contact them. Free meeting. Are you thinking of upgrading your kitchen? How about a bathroom, basement, deck, a special project? Arch Design Builders. It starts with that meeting. It starts with calling my friend Roxanne at 401-218-9707. 401-218-9707 for Arch Design Builders. Amazing work. 5-star work. Custom build and remodel. The search is over. I'm doing you a huge favor. And Roxanne goes the extra mile. Her and Ed, they work great together. I love these guys. New kitchen, bathroom, basement, deck, special project, Arch Design Builders. All right, staying within the realms of reality. Just step back just for a moment. And even, I'm not going to argue. I don't argue with the Karen Reed crowd. I don't. But if you're on the fence or you're not sure or you do think, let me just share something. And then you have to be realistic. Because I think some of the people, the reaction is not realistic. Those voicemails, are those voicemails really realistic? These some of the women say, well, that's how I would react to my boyfriend. Let's take her at her word, even though I don't believe this, that he was supposed to go in, check on things, and then come back out. Does her wrath and fury not hit that? Wouldn't she text him and say, what's going on here? What's happening here? Why am I out here? No, she's calling. I hate you. I blanking hate you. And you're a pervert. And you're using me. The alcohol fueled rage. There's a difference between someone getting annoyed, someone getting impatient, and then someone going 0 to 60. But what I think is so interesting about this, and a woman asked it last night, she asked, what did we think Karen Read was doing at that time? And this is where, again, I'm not trying to preach to those that have gone headfirst in, but just think about this. Why would you call your parents? She called her parents. She left there. There wasn't enough time for her to get back to Meadows. So the contention is she hit him and left him. Driving away, she's calling, leaving these alcohol-fueled rage messages. I blanking hate you, blah, blah, blah. But then she gets back to Meadows. And then she's home. And he's still not picking up. Why did she call her parents? As others have said, think about this. I know someone could be watching and saying, well, I'm telling you, listen, I was also talking with my parents. Rest in peace. But you're talking about a 42-year-old woman. And let's go along with the narrative that he was in the house and blowing her off. Are you calling your parents over that at 1 a.m? By the way, they didn't answer. She called the parents several times. Why would you call your parents? You're going to call your parents. If you're saying, yeah, I would do that, you're not normal. Okay, normal adults don't call their parents at 1 a.m. if they're having a disagreement with their significant other. So, as others have stated, the motivation, she called her parents, I believe, because she thought she was in trouble. Or you could either say she thought she was in trouble or she knew she was in trouble. She called her parents. You don't call your parents if you're having a fight. Listen, this is really easy to map out. How many other times did she call her parents? When she was, let's just say she was having a fight with John, or she was upset with John. She called him from Aruba? If they were fighting in the house, she called her parents then? Like, what is this? The answer is no. There's other individuals that have laid out. It's very possible that when she got back to Meadows, Karen Read, it's very possible that she thought someone had seen what happened. It's very possible that she thought that either someone was going to call her or come over. Maybe she thought the police were going to arrive. Maybe she thought, well, someone must have seen it. She's driving away. There's cars on the street. It would be, let me say it this way. It'd be very reasonable for her to believe that someone had witnessed it. It'd be reasonable for Karen Read to be thinking, how come my phone's not going off? She knew the McCabe's. How come they're not contacting me? No one's calling me. What's going on? Are the police going to show up? She wasn't texting him. She was calling him. She called her parents. She called her parents after 1 o'clock in the morning. Why would you call your parents? Why would you call your parents if you were having a fight with your boyfriend? I can answer the question. You're not calling unless you're in trouble, right? When Jen McCabe answered the phone at 5 o'clock in the morning and it was from Kaylee's phone and it was Crazy Karen, right? She didn't think, oh, maybe she wants to chat. You know, if your phone rings in the early morning or late at night, you know something is up most of the time. If you're listening or watching right now, there are people that will tell you, I've talked to people over the years, they remember the early morning phone call they received to learn that their a family member had passed away, that there's been an accident. Think of late at night. Have you ever called, and this is back when people had normal telephones, or even a cell phone. If you had a family member call you at midnight or 5 a.m., and then they just started saying, oh, how would you answer? What's going on? If you saw missed calls at that time, a normal reaction would be something's happened, right? Something's going on. You don't get a call at 1 a.m. Oh, I just called to say hello. No, she called the parents because she was in trouble. I believe along the lines of that. Karen Read wasn't sure what had happened. She didn't know who was looking for her. She knows she put it in neutral, and they are going to have that. And then she gunned it backwards. She knew she had a broken taillight. And there must have been ring camera from John's house of her coming back and looking at her taillight and realizing it was broken. And then realizing something happened, right? As Karen Read's father said, she said, Dad, I hit something. Remember, when they went back to Meadows after the hospital, they went right upstairs. And it's believed that Karen Read deleted the ring camera footage. So, but I think there's little things that come together. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Call Corey today, 401-283-9815. 401-283-9815 for Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Whether you're listening or watching, and maybe you're thinking of, you want to resurface a tennis court, or you want to resurface a pickleball court, or a basketball court. Maybe you want to make your pavement look like new. They epoxy garages and patios, decorative concrete flooring. They'll seal coat driveway. Give them a call, free estimate. Quality Asphalt Seal Coating, 401-283-9815, 401-283-9815 for Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Well, folks, again, it is the John DePietro Show. Good afternoon on this Thursday. I will be going back into court for the afternoon session of the Karen Read trial. The prosecution right now is racking up. They have a lot of momentum. They have momentum from the niece yesterday. That was very powerful testimony. Children are believed in court. That niece backed up what Jen McCabe had said and Kerry Roberts had said. The niece gave powerful testimony. People could try to argue otherwise, but the niece gave powerful testimony. The prosecution is rolling right now. The prosecution is putting on a strong case. Now, I know we have a number of new people that are following, and I see them commenting and so forth on my different platforms. And again, you can follow us on Facebook, obviously on X. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, obviously, radio show, the website. But something that you should know is I support police. With Road Patrol Live, we support police. There are some people covering the trial. They hate police. All cops are corrupt. All cops lie. I don't feel that way. I think by and large, men and women that are police, first responders, listen, we need them. Police get called in very dangerous situations every single day. They never know. Any family member related to a police officer, they never know. Are they going to get that phone call? So just so you understand, people almost throw it like it's a criticism. Oh, you're friendly with the police. Yes, I am. As a matter of fact, we ride with the police. We communicate with the police. I talk to police every single day, all different departments. I talked to the chief of police of Westerly last night. Great guy. We may do some Road Patrol Live in Westerly with the human remains. But just to be clear, I don't think they're crooks. I don't think everything's rigged. I don't think everybody's a liar. No, I don't think that in any way. All right, great job by Gian. Folks, you can see me tonight, Court TV Live, 9 to 10. I'm going to head back for the afternoon session of the Carib retrial tomorrow, streaming live on Fox Nation. Enjoy this Thursday.